start that again. Welcome to the Productivity Pro podcast. I am your host, Nwanneka Tesy. I am excited to be talking about this conversation. I think you hear it so much on the news and it's frustrating, and I get it. I absolutely get it. I think it's more frustrating for those who you can fit into two categories. You absolutely understand what it means and what that means for the economy. And then it also fits into this category where they have no idea what it means and they have no idea what's going on. They're just either clueless, they don't care, or it scares them to death, because it's another word they did not put in their dictionary. So there we are, all afraid of certain things. So what I'm talking about is, my friends, I know this is a productivity podcast, but follow me. There's a reason why this conversation needs to be had. So when I talk about productivity, especially setting your intentions, your career plans, and if you want to start a small business, big business, whatever the case is, this is a situation that's going to impact you regardless of what type of person you are in terms of creating that business sense of who you are. Or if you're just a person that just wants to live their life, that you don't want to have a business, no, it's still going to impact you in different ways. And so we're going to explore that. What I mean, it's the T word, tariffs. So, what are tariffs? I know. I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to have to be that person that talks about the T word any more than what you already see at the news. I didn't want to, but then I realized, to be honest as someone who studied business, I realized that majority of the American people don't even know what tariffs are. They don't know how it impacts them. They don't know what it really means for the rest of the world. They have no idea. And mind you, we are a collective people who decided long before you and I, majority of us, were born, to do international business, to connect everything together. And so here we are. We have no choice but to figure this all out together, right? And when we are doing that, that means you have to be mindful that when other countries are enacting different things, it's going to impact you. So let's talk tariffs. Let's do it. Why not? So this podcast episode, I just wanted to, first of all, take a breather, calm down. It's not a political gimmick. I just want to um, speak about tariffs in a very unbiased way that's just specific to the economy. Okay. And then you get to decide how is that going to impact any type of plans you have, whether you're creating a business of your own, starting something on the side, or you already have a business, or you're thinking about a career shift, buying a home, whatever the case is, you get to have an informed decision, make an informed decision based on the information you have from other sources. Maybe this podcast also helps you. So, do you ever wonder why some imported goods seem more expensive than others? Yes, I got to start with that because now imagine your business brings stuff to the US. If you're a small grocer, you import things from different countries, then all of a sudden, we, the buyers of your small business or any business, we start to realize, last week this was $5, but this week it's like $5.50. And if we ignore it, what tends to happen is these prices continue to climb up, and then it gets to a point where we are either changing where we shop, we are changing the item we buy, or we're completely just not buying that specific thing, period. So for example, if you have maybe a favorite candy bar that's like exclusive to you, you're like, this is it, then you buy it, it's $3 one day, then a few weeks later it's four, and then by the time it hits $5, you're deciding, is this even really what I want? Then suddenly something that used to be bought weekly stops being bought weekly, and then it sits on the shelf. So now you also think about things like, um, why are there some foreign made sneakers that cost more this year than last year? I'm not a huge sneaker person. I'm actually very fortunate because I'm not a name brand person. If the shoe fits, wear it. Do you get what I just did right there? If the shoe fits, wear it. Okay. All right. So my thing is like I go for what's affordable and what works. But there are people who are exclusive to different name brands that have worked for them over the years, and they're going to see those things climb up. So today I'm breaking down what tariffs are, why they exist, and how they can actually impact the economy. So from a big picture, international trade, and to your wallet at the checkout line. That's really this episode is really about that, just to paint the big picture, okay? So first of all, let's talk about this. So what are tariffs, okay? Number one, tariffs is a tax placed by the government on goods imported from other countries. So in this case, it will be the US government is putting taxes on things that other countries will import to America. Easy, 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 easy. Okay, so there are two types. Now, because this is, I don't want to go into full detail and make this a finance episode. By the way, if you don't know, I worked in finance, in banking for many years. So finance is something I like to talk about because I see how it impacts money and people's spending. But I don't want my productivity podcast to just be on that because one, I think you have enough places you can get that as a resource. And I want to include productivity aspects in my episode all the time. So let's talk about this type of tariff called specific tariffs, right? So this is a fixed fee per unit of the goods. So like $5 per imported shirts. Let's use that as an example. So this is very specific. They could say, okay, if you bring 5 shirts, there's a specific fee attached to that imported shirt. So that's one that people will readily understand. And then there's the other one that's based on the percentage of the value of the good. This one is a little harder to track if it's hard for you to kind of do percentage. And so I'm going to just leave it at the more specific tariffs where it's just like, hey, here you go. You have a shirt. We're placing $2, $3, $4, whatever the case is, on this shirt. So this is a specific amount, and that's just it. So now, if you look at the brief history of tariffs, the governments have always used this for many, many, many years, centuries. And this is just to protect the domestic industries, right? And it's also to raise revenue, or to just use it as a political leverage. It all depends on what's going on in that time period. Now, again, like I said, this conversation or this podcast episode is not political in any way. I just want to inform you what they are, why they do it, and how you can be prepared because it's happening, right? So, now, why do they exist? Now we can talk about it as being as an economic protection, like a method to protect the economy. It's supposed to protect local industries from cheaper foreign competition. So here you have it. It could be factual. I don't really know the fuller scope of what's going on in terms of like, is this really it or is there something else? But there is something to be said about, okay, if local businesses are really suffering, maybe, perhaps, it will benefit us as consumers of local goods to see about focusing our money on local items versus, oh, well, there's this country that sells it cheaper. Let's get it. So it's about, your dollar is leaving your country. I'll use dollar because we're in America and this conversation is taking place in America. So it's about, oh, my dollar is leaving US. How can I keep that dollar still in this continent, right? So I could see that number one is people always looking for the bottom line. If you're ever in finance or business or anything dealing with money, overall, the biggest thing is the bottom line. Am I making enough? And how can I make enough money? If you understand that that's how America works, there are a lot of things that'll stress you less. That's it. Okay. Another thing, I'll say 3 reasons I'm going to point out why tariffs exist. Okay. The main one, economy. Someone can state that it's a great economy movement, or it's a great economical movement to kind of keep local businesses making more money. So I could see it on both sides. Remember, I've owned a small business. I get it. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Now, political reasons, that's a second reason. Okay. So it could be used during trade wars. Like everyone, if you are, as, and now I'm an educator, right? So I loved history. I love reading history about different countries. Most students sleep through this. And this is why most people don't understand how history works. So whenever people heard trade wars, they imagine guns, everyone is shooting each other, and things like that. No, trade wars are, it's like a pressure tool. It's like basically saying, hey, imagine you have two neighbors, right? And suddenly they hate each other, right? And then in order to get back at one says, you know what? In order for you to step foot in my yard, you have to pay me $100. And then suddenly that person is like, well, I need something from you. And now I have to pay this much. Now you're freezing out the person that benefits coming over to you because you're trying to kind of get them to do what you want. And that's how the trade war works. It's just basically trying to get like a leverage over another country or region by imposing a higher tariff or taxes, so that it makes it harder to near impossible for them to bring their stuff over. So and then another thing is revenue generation. So this means in developing economy, there's some economies that may not rely heavily on income taxes. So this could be something that will benefit them in raising their revenue. I could see this. But overall, it's always going to fall into the two major reasons: economic and political. Money and power. Money and power. If you understand those two things, you've pretty much understood all of America and its capitalism and some of Europe. And so if it makes money or gives power, they're going to go with that. Okay? The reason I highlight this is once you understand this, even though it's nerve-wracking and it's stressful, it takes a lot more pressure away from you, and when you thinking, oh, what could be different, I have to make it work in my favor. You just got to ride it. You got to ride the wave like the rest of us. So what does this mean for all of us? What does this economic movement, how does that impact someone like me, and someone like you? Well, for consumers, that means higher prices on imported goods, which means you can't buy as much anymore. That's just it. And maybe the little money we had to begin with, now it can be kept in our pockets. That doesn't help anyone really, because for the economy to keep moving, that means for capitalism to keep moving the way it moves, that means they want me to keep spending. It works in their favor, right? So I don't know if everyone has thought it through that it kind of hurts everyone, but then if if you're talking to the super wealthy, this doesn't really impact them because it doesn't matter how high something is, they're gonna buy it. But for the rest of us, we do notice, right? I remember I used to buy groceries maybe 3, 4 years ago, and I could buy my entire week's grocery $100. Now I if I could do 190, it's a good week. And I don't even splurge. I don't even splurge. My friends have seen my meal preps and they can tell you I don't even go all out. But because things have gotten so high, in order for me to eat healthier, it just means I have to work more in order to consume healthier items. That's just it. Now, what does that mean for producers, right? So that means domestic companies, they might benefit short term. So because now there's less competition. If there was a company that was like, oh, most of our goods are based in, I don't know, the Netherlands. This is a rough example. Now they no longer buy from there because there's a high tariff on their goods. Now company A that was all American or local, they're like, oh, this is great. Everyone is coming to me, right? But that also means they get to pay more for imported raw materials. So no one is free. No one is free because America and the rest of the world decided many, many, many years ago to kind of combine and do things internationally. There are just some things that we don't have in this country that other countries have. And that's why the domestic and international trade works, because if this country doesn't have it, they can go to this country. So when people are thinking short term, they're gonna think, oh, this benefits me because now everyone is gonna come to me. But then what if you run out of the material? And that material is in China. Guess what? You have to pay higher for that material, and eventually it cycled back to where it's now starting to stress everyone. So I'm just informing and giving information based on a business and a finance standpoint. You take it how it is. Now, how does this impact international trade? This can lead to retaliation. So trade wars are no joke. I feel like besides life being lost, and that's why actual wars are worse. So I'll never compare but it has the same situation. You're stopping a country from progressing or doing their normal businesses, and you're forcing them to kind of show their hand. This is what I mean. Now, we remember when we talked about the two neighbors, and then this one is like, hey, unless you pay me $100, you can't come here. Now neighbor B decides, okay, is that how it's gonna be? Finds out that neighbor A has to walk the sidewalk that's owned by neighbor B. And now neighbor B is like, not anymore. You can no longer walk the sidewalk, even if you pay me $1 million. But neighbor A realizes, oh, gosh darn it, in order for me to get to work, I do have to use that sidewalk. And now I'm stuck. I'm not making money. I'm miserable. Neighbor B is miserable. Everyone is miserable. So at the end, no one wins. No one wins a trade war. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. Not in history, not in real life. Now inflation. Oh my goodness, that I word. Yeah, this pretty much overall is going to impact the higher prices, especially if the costs are passed down the supply chain. So that thing you were getting on Amazon, you were getting on, it's cheap, it's great. And then suddenly you're like, what's going on? Yeah, it's going to impact you. Everyone will be impacted. The only ones who will benefit are the super wealthy because prices won't matter to them. It doesn't really change how they consume things because these are people that, some of them wear 100,000 watch. So if egg jumps from $5 to $12, do you think the wealthy will care? Absolutely not. They will not care. When these things happen, it doesn't really impact them right away. It only impacts them if everyone collectively says, you know what, Amazon, this is getting ridiculous. All billion of us, we will no longer shop at Amazon. No, that will never happen. Not even in a long shot. And that's why it would never impact the wealthy. But the regular people, yeah, absolutely. We're in for a ride. Now, for jobs, oh, this is a mixed situation. Um, so it could protect some areas of the workplace, and then it could harm others. Talk about manufacturing and agriculture. I could see that area being impacted the most. So I mean, it all depends on what you're doing. Okay. So just keep in mind as you're hearing the word tariffs and you're like, initially you want to say, well, has nothing to do with me, or I'm making six figures. I could afford $6 or $10 for 12 eggs or whatever the case is. I want you to do something different. I want you to always think, okay, everything does impact me. Doesn't even matter if it does. Okay, for instance, there are people who can say, oh, I love the cold. It doesn't matter if it gets colder, nothing will happen to me. I love it. But then they have a spouse that hates it. And in time, that spouse gets cold, gets pneumonia, and eventually passes away. So now you tell me, just because something doesn't impact you doesn't mean it won't impact you. And this is the deeper conversation of why it's important to, as a collective nation, be worried when things are happening, because eventually it'll get to us. It'll get to all of us. Just like Edgar Allan Poe had the mark of the, oh, I'm going to remember this poetry, but it's basically about the wealthy shutting themselves away from all the people who had the plague, and eventually the Red Death, it was in the castle. And so eventually we all get impacted. So um, overall, what does this mean? Whether you're a business owner, a shopper, or someone who just wants to understand how prices are shaped, tariffs affects you. They might protect some industries, but they can also trigger chain reactions across the economy. We're all going to feel it. So what I invite my listeners to do is I want you to reflect. I want you to really reflect. I want next time you see a made in label, think about what it took to get that product in your hands, right? And also how policy choices like tariffs quietly shape your daily spending. It's going to change. It's absolutely going to change. So I wanted to have this discussion because one, I think it's important, and I'm just a nerd about, anything dealing with economy and finances and business. So but I want to hear from you. What are some of your thoughts on tariffs and how do you think it's going to impact you directly and indirectly? And how can you put that together in your productivity plan for this year? How does that look like for you? Um, yeah, right? Email me. I would love to hear that. And also go on Instagram and drop a comment, share, subscribe, like, because I think this is an interesting conversation. And I think as an American, citizen and as American people, as American educator, I want to encourage you to say it's okay to talk about the economy. I think some of the issues we have is because one, people don't understand the dialogue. And because they don't, they spit out a lot of rubbish and they're afraid to ask questions. And secondly, I think sometimes people feel like if we talk about it, then it's taboo. Well, I'm opposite. I feel like we have a conversation where there could be a good dialogue between different groups so we can figure out the best possible outcome. All right, that's what I have for this week's Productivity Pro podcast. And I am always grateful to my listeners and I'm always grateful to my guests. And let's all make sure that we are taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, spiritually, everything, so that we can continue to be our most productive self. And as always, I'll see you on the podcast. Good night.